John, with so many Disney and ESPN entities ramping up to cover the games, with the threats of terrorism, with possible protests, with performance-enhancing drugs, with perhaps the more edifying stories of Michael Phelps, what do you think is going to be the story of the games?
What's great for our business, Jeremy, is that we don't know what that story is, because all of these stories can develop in any number of ways. It's the most interesting Olympics in, I can't remember how long, because there are so many possible stories. You have human rights versus sportsmanship. You have what the people who are sponsoring, who are putting up the dollars for the Olympics, and what will be their statement about human rights in China. What will the story be outside of the venue? We're very limited, as you know, in what we can do because of the IOC's agreement with the rights holder, NBC. We have very limited access, but I think this time that's going to pay off for non-rights holders, because there are going to be so many stories outside the venue of what's happening, not just in Beijing, but throughout the country.
Harrison, there hasn't been any serious talk about boycotting. There has been serious talk, though, about various ways of expressing dissatisfaction with the regime, with its reluctance to live up to the assurances it made at the time that it was competing to host the games. What do you think that athletes, politicians can do to express that dissatisfaction and to make it clear that they don't condone the behavior of the Chinese regime?
Well, let's, before I answer that directly, let's go back to 1980 when President Jimmy Carter ordered a boycott and said if the Russians didn't get out of Afghanistan, that, well, we would boycott. Well, obviously we boycotted because the Russians didn't leave Afghanistan. I think it shows what is going to happen if you attempt to force any nation or any country to change their policies under threat of a boycott by a few hundred athletes. It's simply not going to work or have any great effect. The Russians, in turn, of course, boycotted us in 1984 when, I guess in retaliation for what we'd done in 1980. It has no particular effect, I guess, upon the individual athlete, except those who don't get a chance to go. And that's exactly what happened in 1980. We had athletes who trained for a year, 2, 3, even 4 years, looked forward to taking part in these great international games. We denied that privilege or that right. And that's about the only thing that happens. As far as the Beijing games are concerned, I'm sure there will be no boycott, maybe by an individual here or there, but by no countries per se. I would think that possibly, I noticed that President Bush is going to the opening ceremony. If someone wanted to make a statement, why didn't he stay home? The athletes, they've committed themselves, of course, they're going, that's what they train for. But I think that he could make probably a much bigger, more important statement than any group of athletes could, simply by not attending, as would some of the leaders of other countries around the world.
Will there be any pressure on individual athletes to make some kind of a statement, harkening back to '68 with Carlos and Smith, and how they felt some pressure to make a statement? Do you feel that there will be anything like that with the individual athletes coming out of Beijing?
I would not be surprised if somebody doesn't do something. Again, that's something that we just don't know about, but I would not be at all surprised if somebody didn't do something. I know Carlos and Smith. I've seen them many times over the years, and they seem to represent, I think, in a great many ways, the thinking of American athletes. And I'd not be surprised if we see something.
Well,
Christine, do you think?
I do, and I think, John, it will happen, of course, after their events.
Yes.
For example, Abby Wambach, the soccer star, there's a brilliant woman, a very smart woman, very, very focused on Darfur, There's Team Darfur, the athletes, you probably have heard of that. You can check their website. Joey Cheek, the speed skater, you may have heard of from the 2006 games, who immediately went into the, took his U.S. Olympic Committee bonus and prize money he won from winning a medal, take the word amateur, throw it out. There are no amateurs anymore, which is, by the way, just fine, because that means they can be athletes and come back for many different Olympics, like Dara Torres, who won last night in the swimming, the 100 meters, as a 41-year-old mother, beating kids who are 19 and 20. And I think that's good. I think they grace us with their presence for so much longer. I think it's entertaining for all of us, and they can make money as opposed to having their parents have to mortgage the house 3 times to be Olympians while NBC makes more millions. But the reality is I think that some of these athletes are very smart and very sharp. And Joey Cheek is one who's been organizing a lot of the summer athletes. It's a tough call because there are rules. And any protests, as you know, Jeremy, any conversation can get you kicked out of the Olympics. On one hand, on the other hand, of course, there's the very American, and other nations, of course, have the same value, some of them, free speech, the opportunity to say what you want to say. There are questions about where you can do this, where you can't do it. I doubt they're going to take an Abby Wambach after if the women's soccer team from the U.S. wins the gold, silver, bronze. I doubt they're going to haul her off the medal stand if she does something. My guess is maybe we would hear it more in the press conference afterwards, where we reporters will be, I promise you this, we'll be asking questions nonstop of the athletes. What do you think? What have you seen? How do you feel about China? I think that, frankly, folks, is where you're going to hear more of the protest, not so much in a T-shirt or a salute, but more verbally in answers to questions.